Sounds great, Jesse. Well, I'm Heather Hernandez. I'm the Technical Services Librarian at the Research Center at San Francisco Maritime National Historical Park. And we are chiefly a museum, library, and archive, but we're also the gateway to anyone wanting to research in our object collections. So we have quite a varied collection. I've been cataloging for eons, going back into the Dark Ages, and have been playing around a lot with the advanced cataloging editor and the macros. So I really welcome this opportunity to present and share, because I'm not only hoping to show people what I've been doing, but also to hear from other people how they've been experimenting, maybe some tips and tricks that they've found as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Heather. We're up to 24. So Heather, if you want to get started, go ahead. I have it recording.
Great. The first thing I wanted to show people were a couple of resources that I always have up when I'm doing any macros or the advanced cataloging editor. The first one is the wonderful section in the Koha manual, and it's macros in advanced cataloging, and it shows exactly how to record a new macro, edit an existing macro, but also some great basic syntax. And we'll definitely be coming back to look at this. Another page that I've been contributing to that I like to have up is on the Koha wiki, where anyone can contribute any macros that they've written for other people to copy and paste. So hopefully this will be a wonderful growing resource. So the first thing I'll do is let's key in a new record we can play with. When using the advanced cataloging editor and macros, it's important to keep in mind that the macros are stored as cookies. So they are browser specific and device specific. So I've picked Firefox as the browser that I use with the advanced cataloging editor and macros, and I use Chrome with the basic cataloging editor. Whenever I'm keying a new record from scratch, I start with the basic editor because it has a couple of tricks that I found make it a lot easier. So let's key in a record to play with. So we just go to cataloging, new record. I always use the default framework. Again, your mileage may vary. And the reason that I use the basic editor for this is that a lot of fields are supplied when I just click in them. And that makes it a lot easier. And even if you want to just go hit save, it'll say these are all invalid, but it keys in a lot of information. I'll key a 245 at this point so I can come back to it. And the one thing I found that I really like about the basic editor is the mnemonic prompts here for doing the 008 field. Since no matter how long I've been cataloging, I can't remember the character positions. So I found that keying in the fixed field data here is really much better. And I'll just do a few fields here as an example. And we'll hit save, we'll hit OK. This record should save now. And there we are. I don't need to really worry about the item. I'll just add a bare bones item right now. And now we're ready to find this record here in Firefox. And now when we go to edit it, it'll launch the advanced bibliographic editor because that's my default in my Firefox browser. And I don't know how many of you have played with this editor, but I find it's so much faster for me when I'm just keying from scratch. So let's flesh out a little bit here just to show you how this works. When you're keying subfields, you don't have to key a space before and after them. It will automatically supply the spaces, which I really like. Just hitting carriage return gives you a new field. And it's that simple. You can save at any point. And I save frequently and often. So let's do something fun. Let's key a macro. We simply need to go to the macros button. And I've already got one stored, which is a new 3xx field for book records. To key a new macro, the first thing it would like is a name, and let's key something that we'll probably use a lot, like a note about bibliographic references. After you have your name, just click here, and at this point, I love checking the manual because we can look at what the basic syntax is, simply copy a type of macro that we like one that creates a new field, go back here, paste it in. And then it's as easy as editing for what we want. It's also simple at this point to have it insert a few different fields. When you hit return, you'll get a new line for your macro. And we could do something that would typically occur right after this. Well, let's do something else. Includes index would be appended here. How about something we do quite often will be something like includes chapter on Bishop Valclusa. Your work is automatically saved. And this little saved prompt here tells you that. So at this point, you can close. When you go back, your macros are right there. So let's run some macros. Running the macros are really easy. You pick the macro you want, click run, and it shows up. You pick the other macro and run it. It'll run one macro at a time. I've discovered I don't like that macro. Oh, I don't like that field. I can take out that field. Deleting macros is very simple. You simply select the macro you want to delete, and it's gone. So let's put in another one to play with. We know it's saved. There we go. So those are the basics of keying them from scratch. Grabbing them from the wiki is also terribly easy. If you see a macro you like, you can grab the whole thing, copy it, come back to macros, do new macro, click next to the little one and paste it in. And it should work really well. I have a little space error in that one. Aha, there we go.
Heather, we just had a question, and I saw you just did it on that last example, but Stephanie has asked, can you show the way to include the value for the indicators in the macro?
Oh, absolutely. So yes, this macro here has the indicators for this field set to the first indicator is 2 and the second indicator is blank. There's another macro that can set indicators after any field. And I haven't played with it, but let's play with it. In the manual here, you can set the indicators of the last mentioned tag, in this case 082, to blank and 1. So let's do, say, a 650, a subject heading that we use all the time. I'm going to do one for historic ships. So this is going to be a new 650. And let's do more than one field too, for example. And we would just put in here and hopefully it works. There we are. 650, blank 0, historic ships, conservation and restoration. As I mentioned, I haven't done new macros with indicators very often, so I'm still kind of playing with that, but it seems to be working pretty well.
Great. Heather, we have another one. Jenny has asked if you've tried to do a macro for the 007, 008 to help non-cataloging staff change the material type on certain local bibs.
I haven't played with macros for those fields because, again, those fields are ones that if I'm editing, I've found the basic editor to be a lot easier. When we try to edit the 008 here in the advanced cataloging editor, we're looking at a string of characters in a character position, and it's pretty easy to eyeball the date, for example, or the place of publication, even the language. And those can be changed fairly easily by clicking in the field and changing that over here in the advanced cataloging editor. But when you're talking about changing things like the material type and wanting it to agree with the 007, like this, putting in the 007, it's, I find, not very easy over here because you're lost in a bunch of character positions. So what I tend to do for the 007 and the 008 is to really do them over here in the basic editor, because then, there we go. Then you have these prompts saying category of material, specific material designation, say loose leaf. Okay. And you can save your record over here in the basic editor. You go back over to your advanced editor, view the record, and then go in to edit it. And you're going to see your changes. It's a bit of clicking back and forth, but I found that that basic editor with the field prompts really helps to change the record in just the way you really want to change it.
I'm going to jump in for 1 sec here. Just to say, there is development in place to add those little helpers like you have in the 008 for both the, I think, 006 and 007 fields.
Great.
So that should make them a little simpler. As for popping up a window that's more straightforward, kind of like the basic editor for the 008, that's something that's in the works, but it's not, there's no current development yet, but it is an idea that is at least out there. But to answer Jenny as well, you can write macros that will add an 007 or an 008, as long as you get them defined right beforehand. You can go ahead and use those macros to replace them. And it will, it'll put whatever values you want there. So like if you have a DVD and your DVDs are all generally the same 007, you can have that entered right away. That's no problem. Like things like, I'm going to add it to the chat here. Right. That didn't work because I pasted the wrong thing. Give me 1 second. I'll actually copy and paste the 007 field that you can add. There you go. If you put that into your macro, that will add a valid 007 field for you. So just wanted to throw those things out there. Sorry. Thank you.
No, that's great. It would be really great to have these added to the macro wiki page too.
And I put the bugs in there that Nick was talking about in the chat if anyone's interested. Oh, Heather, I have a couple questions that people have submitted while you were talking. First of all, you've gotten greats and thank yous and great tips. So great job, Heather. A couple people have asked about, can you talk about how you use 2 different browsers? And when there is an update for, let's say, Firefox, what have you done to fix if you lose your cookies from an update or things like that? So if you could just kind of talk about keeping those 2 browsers open a little bit.
Absolutely. So when I have my Chrome browser open, since the last editor that I used on it was the basic editor, it does remember that. Even if I clear my browsing history or clear my cookies, when it comes to the basic editor is the default. So my Chrome tends to remember that and put me into the basic editor every time I decide that that's, I want to edit a record in Chrome. With Firefox, in order to preserve my macros, I've gone ahead and used the feature where I can sign in, and that is under the options. So you can create an account and sign in so that Firefox will remember your settings across different devices. And that was invaluable because I recently changed computers and I was very nervous about losing all my macros. And luckily, my macros were saved in the cookies. And also be sure that you have your Firefox browser set so that it does remember cookies for this site so that it'll save your macros. And another reason I like contributing to the Koha wiki with the macros is that I know that if something happens and I lose my macros in my browser, if I've contributed them to this website, I can always go back and copy and paste them.
Excellent. Well, that was it for the questions that were coming in. Does anyone else have questions for Heather? Or do you have any examples of macros that you've tried to create in the system and any feedback that we can share with the rest of the group? Well, as we're waiting to come in, Jenny shared with us that she's tried with some success to go into the basic editor, set the pull downs, and then look at the top full line and copy and paste into a macro in the advanced editor.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that's a great That's a great tip.
I've been doing a lot of map cataloging, so maybe I'll try doing one of those while we're waiting for some questions.
And I just want to throw out there that if anyone who's using the advanced editor, anything you find or anything that you wish that it did that it's not doing, please file bug reports in the community. Let us know where we need to improve it. It is still in the labs or experimental stage, at least in its integration to Koha. Someday it would be nice to get it to not have to be experimental. And I think we're pretty close. I think it works pretty well in the large part. There's just a few little quirky things that we need to fix to get it really running correctly. And then I'll just mention as well, because I always like to, that using the Mark Edit integration will allow you to do some of the things that maybe you can't quite do in the advanced editor yet. And the Mark integration is really cool in what some of the things it can let you do in the way of editing multiple records at once.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick.
And Barton had posted in the chat, how do you add the little thorn symbol? And that is Control D. And I believe, Heather, if you can show the keyboard shortcuts there.
Yes, yes.
So all of the little keyboard shortcuts that are handy are listed there.
And I love that you can leave this open.
Oh, we've had one question come in. Okay, Barbara Johnson has asked, we'd like to see macros that can be attached to function keys or Control-Alt-Shift combinations instead of needing to click on the macro button and select Run.
That's something that I would love to see too. I would also hope that eventually we can set some macros at the system level, perhaps with a system preference, so that all the catalogers at a particular library could use them. Because something, for example, like the 040 is probably going to be uniform over an entire institution. And then catalogers who want to do their own particular thing can set their macros to be set as cookies. And I would love to see more keyboard shortcuts, because it's one thing I like so much about the Advanced Bibliographic Editor is that so much of it is straight keyboarding. So the more I can do on the keyboard, the faster I'm going to be.
Awesome. Okay, and Nick just said there is a bug, 17179. And I'm going to pull that up real quick and I'll put that in the box. And that is actually to add keyboard shortcuts to repeat, duplicate a field, and cut texts. So yeah, that would be great. Barbara, Heather, if you guys want to respond to that bug, that would be fabulous, because then we can get some movement in there for people to see what type of bugs are in there. And I was just talking with Jenny yesterday, and she's been active in Bugzilla too. So the more comments we get, the faster it can move. And I know Nick can kind of talk more about that too.
Great.
And yeah, I apologize. I thought there was a bug open for the for making the macros shortcuttable, but I guess there is not currently. So feel free to file one though, and we will definitely take a look at it.
Okay, it looks we have another question that came in from Jenny. If you have a record on a different framework and go from basic to advanced, Koha remembers your other framework and it doesn't go back to default. I'm trying out hotkeys. If we do that, maybe it will be tied to a branch library or login.
I think those are two separate questions.
Different questions, yeah. That kind of just rolled right into each other.
And as far as I know, I think that if you edit a record in the advanced editor and save it, that will still default it to the default framework. I didn't think that had changed. I believe there was a problem where if you were editing records in the simple editor, it was losing the framework, and that is repaired. But I think that frameworks still get sent to the default from the advanced editor. And that's really kind of just a function of the fact that the advanced editor is not built to work with frameworks. It doesn't understand that a little bit.
Yeah, I've noticed a little bit of a problem with that. I've opened one of our real records just to show that whenever a record is first opened, I get this 942 that has defaulted to archives. But since that's not a field we really use, I just zap it. And then also all of our records are in the default framework, so I haven't had that much of a problem with it.
And the bug that you just mentioned, Heather, is actually bug 15974, and that one has been resolved.
Great.
So and that 942C, that is the record level item type. And so that should be set correctly, ideally. Most people are using item level item types, but having a record level item type set is still important because it can have other effects. But if you, in case anybody doesn't know, the advanced editor, it's also called Rancor. That's kind of the code name for it. The friendly name, if you're familiar with Star Wars, it's a very cute little beastie that Luke fights at one point. And if you search Bugzilla, if you search for Rancor, that's going to get you most of the results. RANCOR.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Heather or for any of us here at Bywater, or things that, again, that you've seen or you'd like to see in the advanced editor? Okay, well, this session has been recorded, so you will be able to go back and watch Heather walk through creating macros and setting them up in the system. I'd like to thank Heather for joining us today and presenting on macros in the advanced editor. It's been wonderful having you, Heather. You were smooth as silk. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It was fun. And I'd like to encourage everybody to please contribute your macros to the advanced editor macros page on the wiki.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather. And thank you, Nick and Barton, for jumping on as well.
Thank you, Heather, and Jay-Z for hosting.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone at Bywater for making this possible.
All right, awesome, everyone. Thanks and have a wonderful Thursday.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.